what happened in Judah following the destruction of Jerusalem in 586 BC? This is the question we seek to answer today as we conclude our verse-by-verse study of the book of 2 Kings on walking through the Bible.
Glory of his cross.
Today we're going to be discussing 2 Kings chapter 25, verses 22 to 30. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to 2 Kings chapter 25, verse 22. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 2 Kings chapter 25, beginning at verse 22. Then he made Gedaliah the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, governor over the people who remained in the land of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had left. Now when all the captains of the armies, they and their men, heard that the king of Babylon had made Gedaliah governor, they came to Gedaliah at Mizpah, Ishmael the son of Nethaniah, Jehonan the son of Kareiah, Sariah the son of Tanhumeth, the Netophathite, and Jaazaniah the son of the Maacathite, they and their men. And Gedaliah took an oath before them and their men, and said to them, Do not be afraid of the servants of the Chaldeans. Dwell in the land and serve the king of Babylon, and it shall be well with you. But it happened in the 7th month that Ishmael the son of Nethaniah, the son of Elishama of the royal family, came with 10 men and struck and killed Gedaliah the Jews, as well as the Chaldeans who were with him at Mizpah. And all the people, small and great, and the captains of the armies, arose and went into Egypt, for they were afraid of the Chaldeans. Now it came to pass, in the 37th year of the captivity of Jehoiachin, king of Judah, in the 12th month, on the 27th day of the month, that Evil-Merodach, king of Babylon, in the year that he began to reign, released Jehoiachin, king of Judah, from prison. He spoke kindly to him, and gave him a more prominent seat than those of the kings who were with him in Babylon. So Jehoiachin changed from his prison garments, and he ate bread regularly before the king all the days of his life. And as for his provisions, there was a regular ration given him by the king, a portion for each day, all the days of his life. The nation of Judah is no more, and along with it, the land that God had given to Israel over 800 years before was bereft of most of God's people, with only a very small remnant left by the Babylonians to till the land. Now the book of Jeremiah will tell us that about this time there was an influx of Jews who had been in the surrounding nations before the captivity, who did return to Judah, but the events near the conclusion of this chapter would ultimately put an end to that. When Israel entered the land, they entered as conquerors under Joshua. They didn't fully expel the Canaanites, though, and this sin would directly lead to their downfall here in 2 Kings 25. How so? Because the Canaanites worshipped false gods, something that Israel copied time and time again during the period of the Judges. Idolatry could be seen during the times of Saul and even early into David's reign, though less so here. Solomon would introduce idolatry again into Israel later in his life, something that led to the kingdom being split into Israel and Judah. Israel in the north exclusively followed idols from their inception to their destruction by the Assyrians in 722 BC. The nation of Judah, towards their beginning, had a run of good kings: Asa, Jehoshaphat, Joash, Amaziah, Azariah, and Jotham, a period covering 175 of the first 210 years of their existence. The problem was that 96 of the next 156 years would be ruled by wicked kings, and with each successive wicked king, the wickedness got worse. During this period, which included 9 kings, only 2 were righteous, Hezekiah and Josiah. The rest were wicked, including the last 4. And for this reason, God gave Judah up into Babylonian captivity and allowed his temple in Jerusalem, as well as the city itself, to be destroyed. Jerusalem had served as the capital of Israel and then Judah for over 300 years, since the days of David, and it was reduced now to rubble. The temple, the grand structure that Solomon built, and the place where God placed his name, was no more. And the people of Judah were now in a foreign land, unable to worship God completely according to the law of Moses, for there was no temple or tabernacle to offer sacrifices at. Even the Ark of the Covenant, which symbolized the presence of God, is gone, and in fact we never read of it returning with the Jews from Babylonian captivity. But as we will see in future studies, God did not abandon his people. He still had a purpose for them, and that was Jesus Christ. But that purpose was still over 500 years from being fulfilled, and for the time being, Judah would have to suffer her punishment in Babylon. The land formerly known as Judah and Israel, it still had people living in it. So there had to be a government set up to keep order. But instead of a king, Nebuchadnezzar had set up a governor over the region that would report directly to him. Thus, the land was entirely under Babylonian control and not simply a vassal state ruled over by a semi-independent king. Gedaliah was set up as this governor. From Jeremiah, we find that Gedaliah was a Jew. Thus, the people left behind weren't being overseen by a foreigner. With Jerusalem destroyed, Gedaliah made his residence at Mizpah. Now, we have seen many places named Mizpah in the Old Testament, but the one likely being referred to here is the one in the tribal territory of Benjamin, about 13 kilometers or 8 miles north of Jerusalem. This city would have been ideally placed for him to oversee the remnant left behind to till the land of Judah. And so that's why this is a likely candidate for Mizpah here. 2 months into his governorship, though, some of the captains of the army who had fled when Zedekiah was captured came to Gedaliah in Mizpah, hearing that he had been made governor. Gedaliah told them that all would be well with them, and they could remain in the land so long as they served the king of Babylon. In other words, he was offering these men a pardon for their past actions against the Babylonians. They would hear nothing of it, though, and so one of them, Ishmael, killed Gedaliah. Along with Gedaliah, the band of men killed any of the Jews and Chaldeans that dwelt in Mizpah. But this act meant that they could no longer dwell in Judah, for certainly they would be executed for treason. So they all arose with the people, small and great, who were seemingly allied with these captains, and fled to Egypt. Jeremiah would be among those who went to Egypt, though he seemed to do so unwillingly, as he had prophesied against fleeing to Egypt in his book. Much more is said about this time period in the book of Jeremiah, so we'll save further comment on that until then, except to say that at the end of Jeremiah, he records of another wave of captivity for the Jews under Nebuchadnezzar that took place in about 682-681 BC, thus bringing the waves of captivity of the Jews in Judah to an end. The captivity would continue for quite some time still, but the waves of new people being taken captive would end, as there would be hardly any Jews left in the land after that. Before closing the book, though, the author of 2 Kings skips ahead in time 37 years, counted from 597 BC, to deal with what happened to Jehoiachin. Why is this important? Because the Messiah would come through Jehoiachin, as seen in Matthew chapter 1, so knowing what happened to him in captivity is good for us to know. The year is now 562-561 BC. Nebuchadnezzar has just died, and Evil-Merodach, his son, reigns in his place. By this time, Jehoiachin is about 55 years old and had been in jail for the entire time of Judah's captivity that began under him. However, possibly out of a sign of kindness, Evil-Merodach released Jehoiachin from prison and gave him a prominent seat at the king's table, along with a daily provision that would last until Jehoiachin's death, a date for which we don't know. Although this might sound peculiar at first, let's remember that Daniel and other Jews rose to prominence in the Babylonian Empire. So, with Nebuchadnezzar dead, and perhaps Evil-Merodach not even being alive when Jehoiachin was taken captive, it shouldn't surprise us that Jehoiachin would be released from prison and, as a former king, be elevated by Evil-Merodach. God's providence is likely at work here too, as God is protecting Jehoiachin's house, even in captivity, along with Jehoiachin's son, Shealtiel, as it would be through him that the family of the Messiah would come. Praise be to God for this. And so with that, we conclude our verse-by-verse study of the book of 2 Kings. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's overall review of what was revealed to us in this book as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.
of his cross.